Let's take that flare element a step further. Let's go back to the original file of the ring flare we have here. Now, as I said, we'll get back to adjusting these things. I never want to get, when you're building these composites like this with a lot of special effects, you kind of get the elements in place and get the effect started. And then as you add more elements, you're going to find yourself tweaking things as you go. So I may find myself adjusting the intensity of the flare in just a minute. But enough is in place for me to say, OK, I like where that's at. Let's bring in the next element. What I want to do now is bring in the elements that I want to put in her hand. Now, I want to carry this ring flare kind of motif throughout the poster. I want to have that element surrounding her like I've got it. But I also want to put it smaller around her hands, like she's conjuring this little light effect here. But I want to do that using 3D. Yes, I said it, 3D. Those that know me are watching right now are thinking, he's finally getting into 3D. No, this is just a little piece of 3D, though. It's a really cool effect, though. And it's taking a 2D element, putting it in three-dimensional space. So it's still a flat element, but we're giving it three-dimensionality, and it results in a really, really interesting effect. So as this is, we're going to take this ring element. It's on its own layer here. We're going to go to the 3D menu, go to New Mesh from Layer, and choose Postcard. Now, what Postcard does is it keeps the image as a flat, two-dimensional image. However, it is now in a three-dimensional space. So if I go and get my 3D tools here, lower the Layers panel, two panels you need to have open when you're working with 3D is the 3D panel and the Properties panel. So I'm going to go in here and grab the 3D object, which is Layer Mesh 1 here. And if I just move right outside here, move this around, now you can see it's in 3D. So it's moving around in a natural three-dimensional space. So now, let me reset that. But, as I usually say, why stop there? I'm going to move that element, just give it a little bit of an angled turn right here. And now what I'm going to do is go into that same 3D panel while I have that Layer 1 mesh selected, which you can rename, by the way. We'll just call this ring. It's like the Layers panel. You can actually just rename these for better arrangement. This is probably I can't even spell flares. Nobody caught that? OK. So we'll name that. So with that selected, I'm just going to go to the 3D panel pop-up menu here and choose Instance Object. What that does is it creates a second instance of that flare that is linked to the original. So like a smart object, if I make a change to the original, it will affect this one.
This question was posted by Jay Stoop, and they want to know a little bit more about the flares. So they want to know, can you add flares to a library so that you can use them on several different documents?
Absolutely. To the Libraries panel in Photoshop? Yeah, actually, once you have a flare created or pull it on its own layer, just drag it to your Libraries panel. You can pull it anytime you want. I have them saved as brushes because the thing about saving it to a library, it's going to be one specific size.
Right.
As a brush, you can size the brush and do whatever you want with it. You can actually change the behavior of the brush to do really chaotic things with the flares as well. So yes, you can do it in the libraries. I would suggest doing it in the brushes, though.
Cool. Any questions from our studio audience here while we're getting this loaded up? Yeah?
They're mesmerized. OK. I don't know why my flare was
There's a question in the front. Pass her a mic.
How long does it usually take you to do a poster from start to finish?
95% of the time, I'm doing these in one sitting. Sometimes I'll do it in two. I don't have the patience to wait to sit on a project for weeks at a time. Yeah, most of the time I'll do it in two or three sittings, but a lot of times it's just one. Yeah. So. And a lot of it's working out ideas. As I progress, I do one poster, and so I'll bring the technique into a new one. As you refine techniques, it just makes your workflow that much faster. So, but if I'm in discovery mode, if I'm experimenting, I don't really put a time limit on it. I just kind of play with it until I come up with something. So, when it comes to finding ideas and refining technique in Photoshop. And I always tell people this, if you see a poster that grabs you, you like the design of it, you like an effect in it, try to replicate it as it is. You like take a picture of it or pull it from you do a Google image search and like, and just try and match what they've done. What that does is it helps you refine your technique and figure out problems and go. And when you take that to your next design project. So I'll see a poster and I'll do it verbatim as it is. Like I just recently played with recreating the Rogue One poster, the Star Wars Rogue One, because Pixel Squid is a 3D vendor. They have a lot of Star Wars objects on there. So I was like, ooh, they had a lot of Rogue One stuff. So I played with creating the Rogue One poster. Actually, I pulled a lot of different techniques just playing with that that I didn't have before. So even an exercise like that will give you a technique that you can use later in something else. So, because people, I mean, the reason why I don't teach that, something like that, is not everybody wants to know how to do a Star Wars poster, but they do want to know how to do that cool effect in the Star Wars poster. So that's what I do is I take that, figure it out, and pull it in there. So, all right, so I'm going to do this flare thing one more time. And that's probably a good thing, for those that didn't see it. Make it a little bit smaller. Okay. Quick recap. So we do the filter, distort, polar coordinates, 3D, postcard.
Corey, we did have a quick question about those polar coordinates.
Yeah.
Nancy wanted to know, where did you go for those polar coordinates? Maybe you could just show that one more time.
Sure. So when I've got my layer selected, just going to go to filter, go to distort, right here, polar coordinates. And you've got two settings. This is probably one of the easiest filters in Photoshop. You have two checkboxes, rectangular to polar and polar to rectangular. So rectangular, the first one, rectangular, gives you that rounded one. The other one kind of distorts it in the outer direction. This one kind of wraps it in this way. So,
Great.
So like that, see?
Thanks.
Oh, I just did it to my existing one. All right, so you can see it created an instance, layer one mesh. I don't know why it wasn't doing that, but we're here. So now if I just take this instance and now I can rotate it, and while it looks like it's a separate element, if I grab the main object now, group it in, so now I can treat those elements. So I'm going for like this kind of atom look. You know, it's got the rings. I'm going to position this one right about like that. And let's take this one and rotate it around. You can use the widget here. You can freehand manipulate 3D objects like this, but there's this widget that always shows up when you select a 3D object. And just moving your cursor over any of the functions, it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife for 3D. You just kind of rotate over it, and you can rotate the objects. You can actually scale them on a particular axis like this, making it a more oval shape. So you can manipulate that in a lot of different ways. I'm going to do something like this. I think that's good. Let's hurry up and bring it into our poster before it decides to do something else. Now I'm going to drag. So now, this brings up another point. Up till now, you've seen me take 2D images, and I'll just grab the image inside the document, drag and drop it to the target file. In the case of 3D objects, though, there's a little bit of a chaos. When you move something, you can't just grab a move tool and nudge it over. Because when you select the move tool on a 3D layer, it selects a 3D tool. So I just grab the layer itself and drag and drop it over to the document. There it goes. Now, I'm going to go in here and to the objects itself, and we're going to manipulate the color. So as I said, when you make a change on one, it's going to go ahead and apply that to the other one. Now I want to put a little bit of an illumination on this. And that's going to brighten up the image a little bit. So you can see it got a little bit brighter. So now what I want to do is I'm going to position this right where I want it to be in the subject's hands. I'm going to use the scale tool. The box in the middle of the little yellow cube, that is the overall scale tool for the 3D object. So I'm going to bring it down, and then we're going to bring right around our hand there. And of course, once I have it there, I can rotate it around to get a better positioning. And don't forget, you can rotate the objects individually as well. So let's do something like that. Spin it around like that, maybe. you could spend a lot of time. Is what it goes back to what I said earlier. I spend a lot of time just positioning things to get them just right. And even when you think they're perfect, you go and nudge it again.